Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm so pleased to be joined by Beef composer Bobby Krlic. Bobby, huge fan of the show. Love your work and everything. I wanted to start. What were your first conversations with Lee about how the music, the score should sound for Beef here?
Well, the first conversations we had were really kind of informed by the whole musical personality of the show. So, we soon discovered that all the music that we listened to in our formative teenage years was pretty much exactly the same. And a lot of that stuff would be kind of synced throughout the show and would finish every episode in a really unique way. And so, we were trying to find something that felt current with the score, but also something that could, feel like maybe somebody is going to Shazam the score thinking it's a needle drop and they don't know, so having something that feels very now, but can also kind of fit seamlessly with the other musical things going on in the show as well.
That's really cool. And I thought that too, actually, because you're right. Like, it does work really well with the needle drops. There's so many of these great, like, iconic songs, certainly for people, I would say, like 35 to 45 range. I don't know. I felt like it's like very, very like keyed into like formative years for people, like maybe in college or whatever. Yeah. So, like, how did you like, I guess, like, musically, then did you try to like, I mean, were you thinking about like Incubus and like those bands when you're doing this? Because it's like funny because it doesn't, listening to the score, it's not exactly like that, right? But it feels like in conversation with, like you said, or like at least like complementary to like what the needle drops are.
Yeah, definitely. So, and thank you for saying that. But I was thinking, mostly in terms of kind of, instrumentation and arrangement, and so kind of started by, there were probably three or four, like 3 to 4 minute long pieces that I made kind of ahead of shooting that I could send to Sonny and see if, that was kind of the vibe. And they were all kind of, the primary elements for them were guitar, bass, drums, piano. And that felt like a good kind of jumping off point in terms of like, a sort of like band ensemble played by me, but as if I'm kind of acting as a one-man band to start with. And then, that was like, hey, like some of them work as full pieces and they are full pieces in the show. And then we were kind of just figuring like what elements can we extrapolate from that and then, play other stuff on top. I mean, I've amassed a huge box of kind of random percussion and egg shakers and claves and all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of just finding rhythms to kind of accent what was going on, but also having the kind of the basis of it being this kind of like more kind of band
Right.
world and finding a way to kind of bridge those two things together.
You mentioned the rhythms, and a lot of it is almost like a ticking clock, and there's always like a kind of real momentum to it. How much of that, I guess, obviously it seems very intentional, but like, what did you think that, like, how did that work with the story that Beef is telling, I guess?
Yeah, I mean that the that was the first thing that I wrote, kind of just based off talking to Sonny, and he was really kind enough to invite me to like a table read, the first table read that they had together, so I could kind of see like how the dialogue came to life and how the characters kind of interacted with each other, and there is this tension the whole way through. I mean, especially in episodes like 1 to 3. So we really wanted to find something that just kind of like didn't say too much, but also it's hinting at like this inner ticking clock as well as what's going on externally. I think everybody inside is just so wound up and so tense. So finding something kind of small and almost irritating. We almost wanted to irritate the audience to be like, "Why is this thing? Just keep going."
That's awesome. You also have like, there's so many things I want to ask you a little like about like specific things, but like the way the title card like kind of slams in and have that very loud, like I
Yeah.
just love that. And I was like, I guess, how did you figure out how that specifically would sound, and like why, like how that part, like how that would sound basically, and like that music cue?
I mean, a lot of this was, it was Sonny and I kind of sitting in here and making each other laugh, and he would just kind of describe the title. He was like, I want this really bombastic thing to just cut whatever is happening previous to the title. I want this thing to just cut straight through and just be like a sledgehammer to the audience. So I was like, well, that, let's all, and it also could be something that was quite separate from the rest of the score. I was like, hey, why don't we just go like really bombastic and have massive timpani and big horns and just have a big blast. And so we figured that out. And then we were like, the last kind of, if the title 20 seconds, the first 10 seconds is that. the last 10 seconds is always something different. And that could kind of be more in speaking to the title of the episode or what the kind of tone of the episode would be. And again, it's like, it's this tension of like the last 10 seconds of it, you never really get to hear it because it gets chopped off. So it's like just this little kind of like, and then we're done.
It's so cool. How did you like think about the different, how the themes, I guess, for Danny and Amy would sound or separate, and like where they would kind of blend together and stuff? And like, how did you kind of think about that with the characters?
Yeah, so Danny, Danny had stuff like, we called it a worm, like almost this worm that's kind of inside of him, and you'll hear it throughout, specifically throughout episode one. It's the thing that keeps going on. And so anytime Danny was like feeling super stressed, you'd have this thing kind of creeping up in the background. And I would say that Danny's sound was kind of more, to start with, is a little more kind of like flackery, like the things that we were drawing from, like, the real kind of like acoustic guitar bass drums, almost like, in that kind of like early Beck kind of world. And then Amy was like a little more put together and a little more serious. She had like the belt piano and bells and kind of bowed stuff. And then, eventually she borrows some of his and he borrows some of hers. And then, once we get into the later episode, it just becomes anybody's theme, anybody's.
Did you have also like, I feel like, I mean, obviously like Paul is such a key character because he like is connected to both of them throughout. And did you like, how did you think of him musically, or if at all? And did you like kind of like use him to like ping between those two, I guess?
Yeah, definitely did. But Paul's stuff was always like, it was either a catalyst for Danny, or it was something that Danny could kind of augment. So like, Paul's stuff would either be something that inaugurated Danny doing something, or it would be something kind of small that Danny could kind of squash to kind of, illustrate the
right
relationship between the two of them.
Other thing I want to ask you too is like, so the show is obviously like linear mostly, or like taking place in real time, but there are flashbacks and stuff to like, we see like later in the season, like younger Amy, and then also like Danny when he betrays Paul with the college admission stuff. And I found both those cues are just like really beautiful. And again, like, that's like serious, like those scenes I feel like the show is, I think, great at like towing the line between comedy and like serious drama and stuff, but those parts are like pretty heavy. And I felt like the music is just beautiful in those sequences and different kind of from what you had done throughout. So I guess like, how did you think of those flashback scenes and like what you wanted to do there? And were those connected for you, at least in turn? Like, were you thinking of those two as a piece or not? And I guess, how did you kind of go about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, the great thing about working with Sonny and having the relationship that we did was he, there's a line where this show could tip over into being incredibly earnest and not believable. But I think that he crafted these characters in these situations so well that we're able to get extremely emotional without even over the top, and it just feels very real. So I think in terms of those sequences specifically, it was kind of, I had carte blanche to kind of, not be cynical and just really be emotional. So, those things, like we lean into strings and a lot of kind of big ambient folk guitars and piano, and, and really just kind of like, it's, they're the real moments in the show that we get to really lean into the nostalgia, and you see the kind of, the genesis of these things happening, and it's heartbreaking. So I think, Sonny just gave the music license to try and be as heartbreaking as possible.
That's awesome. They're really great. I mean, I was listening to it back before we were chatting. You can listen to like the whole score on Spotify, obviously, and other streaming sites, I'm sure. And it's just great. I just thought those two scenes are just so wonderful, and like the
Thank
score
you.
was really great. Yeah. Do you have like? It sounds like obviously like a really fun project for you. What was like a biggest challenge on this for you, I guess, or something that you were like not expecting to encounter? Let's say.
I think honestly, I mean, there were challenges, but I was just so excited the whole way through that I didn't really have time to kind of sit with them or acknowledge them. I mean, this is music that I'm not particularly known for at the moment, but you know, this is music that's been in me since I was 13 years old and first in bands with my friends and first, you know, playing guitar out in front of people. And so, you know, I would say that combined with kind of the way that Sonny was able to express the kind of emotionality of the show and how clear the intention was of everything. It just kind of, honestly, it's a cliche thing to say, but the music just kind of poured out of me. Like, you know, I was able to sit with every episode and it was just really, really fun. It was hard and long hours and a lot of work, but it was just, it's music that I've been wanting to find a vehicle for a really long time. So it was just a pleasure to be a part of it.
That's really cool. And I mean, I think it really, really comes through. We're talking, this is obviously an A24 show. You also did the music for Beau is Afraid, which is out now, another A24 movie. And I get like, you're like the A24 composer of the moment. I was like, and I guess I was wondering, like, do you feel like, is there an aesthetic connection for these projects? Like an A24 aesthetic that maybe like, that connects everything together. I don't even know what the question is, but I was just thinking that because I know you also did obviously like Midsommar with Ari too. So I was like, these are all like and it does feel like A24 has like I don't know if it's a vibe or whatever it is, but their projects have like a great cachet. Like I think Beef is in that conversation as well, right? It's like cool. It's just like, for lack of a better word, it's like a cool thing. And I guess seemingly so is Beau is Afraid and like all these other things that you've done. I don't know. I guess how do you think about that? Like, how do you think about like the studio itself? I guess.
I think they're all really awesome people, and I think that you know the thing that makes all these projects great is that they're just supporting great artists being themselves. You know, Beef is so singular and you know, it's really a big beating heart that's not afraid to express itself. And I think there are other people, had they got involved, may have wanted to quell that in some way. And I think A24 just trusted in the vision. And you know, I would say the same thing for Beau. You know, it's amazing that that film exists in the world. There's nothing else like it, and that you know you can say that so many things that A24 have a hand in. And I think they just see great thinkers and great creators, and they just let them be that, which is amazing.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, as a viewer, I think that comes through because you love I love watching like really creative people get to take like big swings and like kind of connect. And I think Beef really does that. It's definitely a show that I think people have really responded to on Netflix, and it's great. This has been so much fun. Bobby Krlic, composer for Beef. You could listen to the score right now. You should, and you can watch the show on Netflix. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.